We've all been there, right? That one task you know you need to do, you might even want to get it done, but somehow you end up doing literally anything else. We usually call that being lazy, but what if it's not about discipline at all? What if it's biology?
So that's the real question, isn't it? Why do we knowingly, consciously put things off, even when we're fully aware it's going to come back to bite us? That's the puzzle we're going to unpack today.
Because here is the single most important idea to grasp. Procrastination is not a character flaw. It's not a moral failure. It is the predictable result of a biological system. A system that evolved for survival, not for managing your inbox.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll define the puzzle itself. Then, we'll look at the literal tug-of-war happening inside your brain. We'll see how that creates a powerful feedback loop. And then, we'll get to the practical part, how to actually start rewiring that system.
Okay, first things first. Let's get really clear on what we're talking about and why it happens.
So, the textbook definition is pretty telling. Procrastination is the voluntary delay of something you plan to do, even though you know it's probably a bad idea. Those two words, voluntary and knowing, are everything. This isn't about being too busy. It's about making a choice against your own better judgment.
And why would we make such an illogical choice? Well, because it's not a logical choice at all. It's an emotional one. At its heart, procrastination is a coping mechanism. It's your brain's quick and dirty way to get rid of a bad feeling right now, whether that feeling is boredom, anxiety, or the fear of not being good enough.
So, to understand that emotional reaction, we have to look inside the brain. What's actually going on in there is a hidden conflict, a biological tug-of-war.
You've basically got two sides fighting it out. On one end of the rope is your limbic system. It's the ancient emotional part of your brain. All it cares about is immediate gratification. On the other end is your prefrontal cortex. This is the rational CEO, the part that thinks about the future. Procrastination is simply what happens when the limbic system wins.
Now, the limbic system's secret weapon is a little almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. It's your brain's threat detector. And here's the thing. When it sees a big, unpleasant task, it can mistake it for a genuine predator. It can trigger what's known as an amygdala hijack, a full-on fight-or-flight response that screams, "Escape this threat now." And this response gets amplified by a cognitive bias we all have called temporal discounting. Basically, our brain is wired to value a small reward now much more than a big reward later. The distant satisfaction of completing a project just feels abstract. It can't compete with the very real, very immediate relief of checking social media instead.
And here is the biochemical trap. When you give in and avoid that task, your brain gives you a little hit of dopamine. You feel a tiny bit of pleasure and relief. But you're getting rewarded for avoidance, not for action. This little micro-reward for doing nothing is what reinforces the habit and makes it so hard to break.
This process doesn't just happen once. Over time, it builds on itself and solidifies into a powerful, self-reinforcing loop.
And the loop looks something like this. You avoid a task, which gives you that temporary stress relief we just talked about. But the deadline keeps getting closer. That relief turns into heightened stress and guilt. So the next time you face a similar task, it's loaded with all these extra negative feelings, making you even more likely to avoid it. It's a truly vicious cycle.
And if you run this loop enough, it can physically change your brain. You're literally paving a superhighway for avoidance, making it your brain's default path. Meanwhile, the neural pathways for discipline in your prefrontal cortex get weaker from disuse. On top of that, the chronic stress keeps your body's cortisol levels elevated, which isn't good for anyone.
It's also worth noting a common trigger for this whole cascade. A lot of the time, procrastination is really just perfectionism in hiding. The fear of not doing a job perfectly is enough to trigger that amygdala threat response. From your brain's primitive perspective, doing nothing feels much safer than doing something that might be judged as imperfect. Okay, so we've seen the problem and we've analyzed the mechanism. Now, let's talk about solutions. How do we actually start rewiring the brain?
The most important shift in thinking is right here. The goal is not to just grit your teeth and find more willpower. That's a losing battle. The goal is to design a better system, a system that works with your brain's wiring instead of fighting against it.
So what does that look like? Well, here are a few practical strategies. First, de-chunking. You break a big, scary task into tiny, non-threatening steps. Then, cognitive reframing. You consciously change the story you tell yourself about the task. Third, reward action. You intentionally give yourself a reward for doing the work, creating a new positive dopamine loop. And finally, you have to address the emotions that are driving the behavior in the first place.
Let's take dechunking as an example. The task, write a 10-page report, is huge. It's an open invitation for an amygdala hijack. But write one paragraph in the next 20 minutes? That's manageable. It's specific. It's not threatening. Your prefrontal cortex can easily take charge of a task that small.
And we know this works. Research, like the model shown here, has found that self-regulation skills, things like perseverance, are a direct antidote to procrastination. Every time you use a strategy like dechunking to take one small action, you're not just doing work, you are actively strengthening those perseverance pathways in your brain.
Ultimately, it really does come down to this. Your brain is not static. It's constantly changing. And every small step you take, no matter how minor it seems, begins to weaken those old avoidance circuits and strengthen the new ones for action. You are quite literally rewiring your own system.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. Now that you know it's a system, not a flaw, what's the first, smallest, most non-threatening step you can take to begin redesigning your own?